Listen, can you hear it? A breath, stolen from the basalt vault of the Colosseum, slips between deserted arches. Animus imperat fatum paret. The phrase was carved in haste, then entombed beneath fresh marble before dawn, a secret misheard by plebeian ears. Tonight I exhume it for you alone. 8 seconds. Heartbeats. That's all the time a condemned gladiator needed to decide whether to die screaming or die sovereign. Those 8 seconds belong to you now. You were fed a sugar-coated version of Stoicism. Tidy quotes past a lapse, polite resilience between coffee breaks. Forget that. I'm dragging you into a smoke-cloaked corridor where emperors forged psychic armor. Picture Nero in his private library, torch spit hissing across forbidden papyrus. He commands the doctrines of Musonius Rufus burned, not for heresy, but because they trained slaves to stare down power without blinking. Ash spirals upward, yet one apprentice hides a fragment under his tunic and slips away. That scrap crosses 6 generations of tutors before landing in the palms of a teenage Marcus Aurelius at dawn. Sworn to secrecy, Marcus is no marble saint Instagram invents. He is a boy inhaling plague stench, murmuring words smuggled from Epictetus after midnight. Chain the chaos within, and no outer fetter can bind you. Lesson: Master Perception Command Empire. His first ordeal erupts when the Danube freezes solid and barbarian scouts slip over the ice. Senators panic. Marcus inhales, summons the fragment, moves legions like ivory pieces across glass. Blood writes obedience on the snow. Rome endures. Why does that story matter to you, scrolling under dim blue light? Because the identical ghost code thrums inside your skull. Algorithms stalk your cravings, like Roman spies probing city gates. Without the inner citadel these emperors built, you are a village awaiting sack. So hear me not as spectator, but inheritor. The gate creaks, torches flare, and every step we take from here is descent. Steel your pulse. History's unmarked tomb yawns wide, and inside it rests the first blade of forgotten power. Still sharp, still thirsty, it will test you before you ever grip its hilt. Echoing doubt, summoning every trivial urge you imagined conquered. Stay. Resist. Hear iron sing beneath dust. Feel your breath sink with men who commanded epics. Grip the handle in your mind now. Feel its chill. Know this: there is no retreat. Once knuckles close, the catacombs demand courage. Struck from fire, unyielding. Step further, feel the marble underfoot change. From the ceremonial to the sacrificial, what was once golden is now ash-colored, streaked where blood was ritually scrubbed away by trembling novices. That trembling? Institutionalized. And here lies the second secret. They didn't just forget the teachings of the Stoics. They buried them beneath centuries of manipulation. Because raw Stoicism is a threat not to kings but to systems. Understand this. The Roman elite knew Stoicism wasn't a philosophy. It was a weapon. And weapons get regulated. After Marcus Aurelius' death, his heirs feared not armies but ideas. The virtues were rebranded into moral pacifiers. Logos became liturgy. Control became canon. Why do you think Christianity latched on to select Stoic phrases, like a parasite drawing warmth from a corpse? Turn the other cheek? That wasn't Stoic. That was strategy. Extracting resilience but amputating rebellion. Epictetus taught endurance, yes, but not submission. He told slaves, "You are free the moment your mind rejects your master's authority." Dangerous. Too dangerous. So the state stripped out the fury, what was once the command of apatheia. Freedom from external control was twisted into obedience, passivity, quietism. The meditations of Aurelius, once full of tactical detachment and psychological warfare, were copied by monks who rewrote fire as forgiveness. Stoic steel melted into Sunday silence. Even today, that distortion remains. You are told to accept what you can't control by men who engineer what you can't control. Bureaucracies, algorithms, HR scripts. You are being trained not to be stoic, but to be manageable. They peddle mindfulness stripped of the martial core. They sell you peace without power. They speak of virtue like it's comfort, when it was always combat. But here, right here, you rediscover the heresy. To be stoic is to become untamable. Imagine the implications. If every man around you carried ataraxia like a dagger, calm that couldn't be bought, outrage that couldn't be provoked, purpose immune to bribes, every marketing campaign would fail. Every fake guru would starve. Every manipulator would watch his strings dissolve in his hands. You see now why they diluted it? Why the words of Seneca were preserved but never the rituals? Why Marcus is quoted but never studied in full? Because the full code is too potent. It breaks the leash from the inside out. And those in power then or now will always fear a man who needs nothing and kneels to no one. Keep going. You're not even close to the core yet. These walls are narrowing. Your old self won't fit through the next door. Good. Let him rot. You're about to learn what Marcus Aurelius carved into the bone of his will, and why only the initiated ever saw it. Down here, silence sharpens. You feel it in the spine. The hush before revelation. The air itself grows heavier. You've crossed into the third ring, where even the Stoics spoke only in shadows. Because what we now enter is not philosophy, but psychological warfare. Marcus Aurelius called it the inner citadel. Not metaphor, not poetry. A literal mental construct. Trained, refined, encrypted to resist manipulation. You were taught it meant emotional control. Wrong, that's the surface. The real inner citadel was a neural fortress, built word by word, through repetition, hardship, and tactical isolation. Each virtue was a code. Courage was firewall. Justice was targeting system. Temperance load balancing. Wisdom threat assessment. He wrote in ciphered meditation. The mind shapes itself to what it frequently contemplates. So what did he contemplate? Not sunrise reflections or feel-good bromides. He contemplated betrayal scenarios, torture rehearsals, death by poison, blade, or exile. He ran simulations. When the Senate plotted, he was unshaken, because he'd lived it in the arena of his mind 1,000 times. This was the Stoic Black Ops. Mental rehearsals so brutal, they'd be flagged as trauma loops by today's psychology. But they worked, because they inoculated the mind. They made Marcus unbreakable. While others shattered under pressure, his enemies tried everything. Seduction, slander, even spells. Nothing pierced the citadel. And now, that same mental technology has been stolen, refined into digital architecture, used against you. Social platforms exploit your contemplations. They install false citadels inside you. Scroll loops, outrage bait, curated envy. They teach you to react, not reflect. And worse, they teach you that peace is found outside the fortress, in likes, in consensus, in dopamine. You've been conditioned to surrender the citadel's key, but Stoicism never promised comfort. It promised clarity, and clarity makes you dangerous. Start the reversal. Visualize it now. A room in your mind, stone-walled, cold-lit, walled off from all noise. Every external opinion exiled. Every manipulated fear silenced. No ads, no labels, no borrowed values. Just you facing truth without flinching. That is the citadel. Build it, visit it, sharpen it, because they will test it. Marcus did not survive because he was calm. He survived because he built a chamber inside his skull that could not be infiltrated. That same blueprint lives in you, buried under distraction and weakness. Unearth it. The deeper we go, the less human the world becomes. That's why they want you soft, scrolling, smiling, docile, because a man with an inner citadel cannot be farmed, sold, or led. He stands, and when he stands, empires shift. Ready for what lies below? Good. Because now, we descend into the truths they erased, the truths they feared, the meditations they buried. The next step? There is no turning back. Torchlight flickers now, against walls carved not with words, but warnings, symbols banned by bishops, burned by emperors, scratched over by trembling hands, desperate to contain what could not be unlearned. This is where Stoicism becomes unpublishable, where its rituals cross into the forbidden. You wanted virtue? You're about to see what it costs. You've heard of Memento Mori, yes? Remember you must die. But you were taught it like a bedtime proverb, polite, decorative, maybe printed on a journal cover next to a skull. They stripped it of teeth. The original rites were violent, stark, and soaked in blood-lit reflection. Lucretia, Marcus's daughter, died young. Fever or poisoning, the records are unclear. What is clear is what Marcus did in the aftermath. He locked himself in a sealed chamber. For 3 days he wrote no meditations, no commands, no tears. He sat in silence before her wax-sealed body. And when he emerged, he wrote one phrase: "What you love will perish. Stand anyway." That phrase was never published in the surviving scrolls. It was found chiseled in Greek beneath a temple wall, scratched over with Christian dogma centuries later. Why was it hidden? Because it contradicts modern comfort philosophy. Real Stoicism doesn't just ask you to accept death. It demands you train for it, not morbidly, not theatrically, but as a soldier trains with live blades. Every day Marcus rehearsed losing everything. His sons, his throne, his own breath. He called it the daily death. Do you? Do you wake and visualize the ash of your reputation, the silence of your name, the rot of your legacy, and then choose to act anyway? That is Stoic virtue, not positivity, not peace, defiance against decay. Now look at me. You felt the pull this far, because part of you remembers, not with your mind but your marrow. It's awakening. The world doesn't want this version of you, stoically sovereign, fire-eyed, immune to propaganda. They want the docile, distracted version, but I see what you're becoming. So seal it. Say the phrase in the comments now. Amor, Fati, twice forged. Once to claim the identity, again to seal it. That phrase isn't just signal. It's signal fire. It awakens the algorithm, draws other sovereigns in from shadow. That's how this begins. And when you write it, know this. You are initiating into a tradition that predates cathedrals and will outlast currencies. You are reclaiming rights that survived flame, steel, and time itself. Still with me? Good, because now we descend below the teachings, past Aurelius, past Epictetus, into the silence of executions, into the Stoics who didn't write their truths because they died for them. This next circle isn't ink, it's blood. And once heard, it brands you forever. Here in the fifth circle, stone sweats memory. You can smell iron-old blood sealed behind marble seams. This is where the Stoic opposition stood and fell. Not in classrooms, not in books. In chambers under the Senate floor, where virtue clashed with empire and lost. You've heard of Seneca. Maybe you've even quoted him. But what they never taught you was why he died. It wasn't just Nero's paranoia. It was policy. Seneca had crossed the Rubicon, not of geography but of influence. He had begun to whisper treasonous truths to Rome's elite youth. Not slogans but tactics. Not virtue but insurgency. He taught the sons of senators how to rule themselves, to sever emotional ties from public opinion, to root desire in discipline, to kill the craving for power by mastering inner stillness, to the imperial machine that was sedition. What happens when young wolves no longer obey the hand that feeds them? They form packs. So Nero struck. But even Seneca's death was ritualized. He slit his veins in the Stoic tradition, calm, unflinching, speaking principles until the final pulse. His blood ran as a warning and a vow. The Stoics would not kneel. Others followed. Helvidius Priscus publicly executed for speaking truth in the Senate. Thrasea forced suicide for writing a dissenting commentary on virtue. Berea Serranus flayed by spies for mentoring too boldly. These were not philosophers. These were operators, Stoic tacticians who understood that true virtue, when fully embodied, destabilizes tyranny. They called themselves preceptors, not teachers, forgers. Their goal was not to comfort, but to harden, and their methods were stark. Cold water immersion at dawn, fasting for clarity, strategic silence in court, not because it looked noble, but because it trained detachment under scrutiny. And here's the truth they buried with them. Stoicism was never meant for good citizens. It was built for sovereigns in waiting, for men who would rather be exiled than obedient, executed than bent. Ask yourself, if these teachings were harmless, why did the most powerful empire on earth silence them with blade and rope? Why redact the rituals? Why erase the names from scrolls, but keep the slogans alive? Because hollow stoicism is safe, but real stoicism, incendiary. You've made it this far, which means you're ready to see what institutions feared most. That the Stoic isn't just a thinker, he's a threat. And now, you'll learn how later powers, monasteries, corporations, entire systems, took that fire and smothered it in velvet. The next step descends past blood, into the rot of history, the theft of spirit, and the war for your mind. Grip the rail. Keep your eyes open. The next descent is colder. Now the walls we pass are smooth cleansed, sterilized. No more blood. No more symbols. Just polished stone and silence. But this is the coldest layer yet. Because here in the sixth circle, you see what truly killed Stoicism. Not swords. Not fire. But branding. The institutions that couldn't crush it colonized it. After Rome fell, the monasteries rose, and with them came a centuries-long operation to sanitize Stoic power into passive doctrine. They took Marcus's meditations, removed the combat, the dirt, the grief, and replaced it with hollow virtue. Temperance, but without intensity. Wisdom, but with no risk. Stoicism, stripped of blood, rendered safe for prayer. What began as psychological insurgency became spiritual wallpaper. The Stoic sovereign was replaced by the obedient monk, and the world called it progress. But it didn't stop there, because then came the modern empire corporations. In the 21st century, Stoicism became a commodity, a feature in wellness apps, a backdrop for productivity hacks. Logos and ataraxia became buzzwords: safe, sterilized, purchasable. CEOs quote Seneca while breaking men in 12-hour shifts. Tech giants quote Marcus while feeding your attention to dopamine farms. You're not taught to be stoic. You're taught to appear. Stoic calm, efficient, high-functioning. Meanwhile, you are nudged, poked, tracked, bent, until your soul is measured in engagement metrics. This is not philosophy. This is pharmaceutical self-mastery. Even mindfulness, the latest opiate, traces its theft back here. Accept, breathe, let go. They whisper that not to free you, but to neutralize you, teach you to embrace your cage, smile at your pressure, meditate through your exploitation, all while calling it resilience. But resilience without resistance is servitude. And real stoicism, it's not polite. It's frill. It claws through illusion. It names enemies. It breaks the loop. That's why modern systems amputated its teeth. You're seeing it now, aren't you? How every layer you've descended has been scrubbed by hands desperate to keep you tame. And yet you're still here, which means the signal is working. The mask is slipping. You were not meant to be a consumer of virtue. You were meant to be its living weapon, and now one layer remains, one rung lower, where no slogans exist, no teachings, just the forge. Breathe deep. Whatever you were burns here. Whatever you become is forged below. The final step is not study, it is awakening. You want to be a Stoic? Then prepare to bury the boy. What rises next is sovereign. Welcome to the final chamber. No torches now, only the burn from within. No echoes, just your breath. Slowing, centering, sinking with something older than empire. This is where Stoicism stops being a practice and becomes a presence. You've walked through blood, silence, fire, fraud. You've seen the scrolls they burned, the codes they twisted, the rituals they sterilized. And yet what survived? You, not just watching but awakening. You are now standing where only the initiated ever arrived, at the sovereign threshold. Understand this. A true Stoic is not calm because life is easy. He is calm because he is ready to be hated, to be isolated, to lose what he loves without losing himself. That is the unteachable core. No app delivers it. No seminar can fake it. It is forged in fire and chosen in silence. You want the truth of the daily practices? They are not tasks. They are trials. Each one is a blade against comfort, a drill into depth. Wake before the world wants you to, not for productivity, but to defy your lesser self. Hold discomfort without flinching, cold hunger, silence, not to suffer, but to remember that you can. Refuse unnecessary speech, not to seem wise, but to train sovereignty over your own voice. Give without asking, build without credit. Because virtue is its own monument. Stare at your death, not as fear, but as orientation. Every decision made beside a grave is true. Expect betrayal, and bless it when it comes. Each blade carves you closer to the essence. And last, choose the harder path. Every time, because that's where the real you waits. This is not a lifestyle. It's warfare against your weakness. Stoicism was never meant to make you balanced. It was meant to make you unbreakable. And now feel this carefully. No algorithm, no boss, no partner, no label can govern you without your consent. Because now you know, no one can conquer the man who governs himself. That's why the emperors clung to this, why their enemies feared it, why you've never been taught the full code, but now it's yours. So say it one final time in the comments. Amor Fati, twice forged, not just for you, but for the others still in shadow. You say it, and they find the flame. You have descended 7 layers, through lies, blood, distortion, death. And what stands here now is not a follower, not a product, not a statistic. What stands here now is a sovereign, and no system can own him again.